Thank you, Yasmin, for the very kind introduction.
You're welcome.
Although I cannot see the faces of our audience, which is very sad, but not possible at the moment, I can see that many have signed in, and it's lovely to see that our present restrictions open opportunities for a more global audience. So for me, also a very warm welcome to you. Beckett's play is fascinating and has much more to offer than I can cover today. In Absent Bodies, Media Relations in Samuel Beckett's play, my focal point lies on the visual presentation, especially Beckett's stage directions, rather than the content of the play. But I do recommend reading or watching it in full at some time. While watching play, I continuously ask myself, why is this a stage play? The content is in the audio, there is no action, and we cannot even see the bodies. There is nothing to watch. So why was Beckett insistent that this is a play for stage and film? Following some research, I propose that in Samuel Beckett's play, the intentional absence of physical bodies disturbs the performative theatrical media, consequently redirecting the definition of the play from sight to sound, and therefore challenging the normative standards of media. Let's take a quick look at how we can approach this. First, I'll dive into Beckett's directions so that we're all on the same page about the play. Then, I will go over McLuhan's theory of hot and cold media, with various media formats as examples, and this will be our main secondary text. And last, we will shortly take a look at Porter's radiophonic body. So first, Beckett's stage. Beckett's stage directions are meticulous and very particular. He describes the stage bodies as three identical urns standing on stage, touching one another with heads protruding from the top. They are ordered woman 1, man, woman 2. Beckett writes about their appearance. They face undeviatingly front throughout the play, faces so lost to age and aspect as to seem almost part of urns. But no masks, page 307. This already tells us much about the bodies in the play. Visually, they aren't there for the audience, they are absent. Their heads are made to appear as part of the urn, making them harder to distinguish from the object. The film shows very well what that can look like, which is exemplified by the picture to the right. Beckett clearly writes that masks are not an option, which indicates that the facial expressions are still meaningful. Light is very important to Beckett's stage. He states, and I quote, "The source of light is single and must not be situated outside the ideal space in brackets stage, occupied by its victims. The optimum position for the spot is at the center of the footlights, the faces being thus lit at close quarters and from below. The spotlight signals not only when the actors should react, but also their faces for the audience to see. In an extreme manner, Beckett writes that the transfer from light from one face to the other is immediate, followed by the response to light is immediate. The actors are prompted but also controlled by the light. They are its victims. Catherine Weiss explains that for the actors, the brightness and positioning of the spotlight blackens the auditorium. All the actors see is a blinding light. Although the spotlight confronting the actors provides the audience with direct eye contact with the actors cannot see the audience. Hence, the audience stares at unperceiving bodies. Therefore, the light can also influence how we perceive the bodies, meaning that our perception of the bodies cannot be static. This is where Marshall McLuhan's theory on hot and cold media comes into play, because the body and our perception of it also changes with the media. Media is oftentimes perceived as abstract. When we discuss the content of a play, we rarely discuss why something is a play, for example, or what the play, the format of a play, does for the content. McLuhan exemplifies this by stating that the electrical light as a medium goes unnoticed by people because of its absence of content. When it is used to produce content, for example, when spelling out a name as a sign, we only take notice of the content. Media is the messenger of the author. So, what is McLuhan's theory of media? Maxine, I've just skipped the line, I'm very sorry. We are ignoring the purposefully chosen messenger of the author. There we go. So, what is McLuhan's theory of media? The theory of hot and cold media encompasses two important distinctions, the hot and the cold media, as well as the definition of said media, which can be either high or low. McLuhan explains it as follows. A hot medium is one that extends one single sense in high definition. High definition is the state of being well filled with data. So, please take a look at this table. It exemplifies McLuhan's theory using various media. On the left, we have media that are considered hot. On the right, those considered cold. First are the examples relating to Beckett's media choices. In radio, all necessary information is conveyed via sound, whereas on the telephone, the recipient can only assume that all information is passed on. Similarly, in film, we are given all information or important information via the imagery, whereas in television, this is not necessarily so, because very often the program is split into several sittings. Because of this, radio and film are considered a hot medium. Further examples are cartoon and speech, which also function this way, but at the same time highlight another principle of this theory. In fact, hot media are low in participation and cool media are high in participation or completion by the audience. Cartoons or speech require the audience to participate in finding the meaning, especially in speech. How often do we say things that we do not mean? Now, let's circle back to Beckett's media choice and how McLuhan's theory affects them. As play was originally written as a stage play, I'll start with theatre as the medium in McLuhan's theory. McLuhan does not define theatre as either hot or cold, but a stage play follows similar principles as film, which we know to be a hot medium. The audience is given all the information they need to understand what is happening in one sitting via the action on stage. Therefore, we can consider theatre productions a hot medium. Without fully sidetracking this topic, think about what you consider a normal stage play. Comedy, tragedy, maybe Shakespeare. Without asking every one of you, most people will think of a concrete story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Bodies on stage communicating with each other or in conflict with each other. This is, of course, very simplified. Now, you can forget most of that because that is not Beckett's method. The deliberate absence of bodies in play challenges McLuhan's theory. By visually removing the bodies and therefore the action for the audience, he turns a high-definition play into a high-definition medium, into a low-definition medium, meaning that the extension of the sense of sight is diminished. But Beckett redirects us to an extension of the sense of sound. Consequently, the play is again suddenly in high definition. However, high definition means that the play is low in participation, which is very unusual for a Beckett play. And obviously, it does take investment by the audience to make sense of what is happening. Beckett's directions further establish that the sound is to be made as difficult as possible to understand, in some cases as unintelligible as possible, which could again render the play low definition. Gontarski's statement about this sums very well what we have spoken about so far. Play seems, in many respects, an assault on itself, on theatre, drama playing against itself. theatre played against the very idea of theatre. If Godot eliminated action from the stage, play all but eliminated motion. If Godot eliminated intelligible causality, play all but eliminated intelligibility itself, as the words were to be uttered at machine gun-like speed in Beckett's instructions. Play is Beckett's attempt at subverting our traditional understanding of theatre. Now, how does this affect film adaptations? Evidently, the effect of the play is different, mainly because we look differently at film than theatre. The audience's eye is guided by the camera, in contrast to the stagnant view of the stage in theatre. The film also in parts misses out the function of the spotlight by redirecting its function to the eye of the camera, whenever possible. Catherine Weiss writes about the stage play that Beckett challenges the privileging of theatre by staging a performance that resembles film productions. The light functions as a camera that traps actors into repetitive, fragmented scenes and traps the viewers into perceiving the actors. As a film, however, we lose this effect because it's already film. Still, the lack of visual engagement and the disarrayed audio try for the same effect as lowering the definition of the medium, and there is more engagement needed from the audience to make sense of what is happening. This alone could be its own paper. Thus, we move on. The radio appears to have both advantages and disadvantages for play. But why are we talking about radio in the first place? Beckett had already written some radio plays before publishing play, and the extension of sound in the play seems to lend itself to a potential production as a radio play. The exception being Beckett's various attempts at distorting sound. The play loses much in radio. We lose the imagery of the urns, we lose the prompting of the light or camera, and the actor's reactions to it. But what is the difference between high-definition sound on stage to a high-definition sound in radio? To answer this question, we need to turn to Jeff Porter's radiophonic body. This will consolidate how the media choice influences and changes our perception of play, and therefore why Beckett's disruption of theatre matters. The space of the body, as Porter calls it, is uncertain in Beckett's radio plays. While the body is absent as a signifier in radio, it nevertheless haunts the non-space of the listener's imagination as a trace, for the originary body lingers on the margins of the sign. This allusion to Saussure's semiotics emphasizes that the listener will continue to imagine a body to the voices they hear. Porter continues to state that instead of the physical world, the body inhabits the space of representation. The listener will form an image in their mind according to the cues they are given. For instance, the timbre of a voice may allude to different body types or ages. For instance, similarly to play, the bodies in radio plays inhabit an in-between state, in which the listener knows that there needs to be a body belonging to the voice, just as the viewer knows that there cannot be a functioning head without a body. The body never completely disappears, but the sound in radio is designed to present and represent all needed information, and that is the crucial difference to the sound on stage. There is no image without sound in radio. Now, how can we wrap all of this up? In play, the bodies are specifically designed to be absent from view, therefore creating an extension of sound. In radio, sound is needed to convey the body via a variation of tone of voice or additional sounds that might allude to bodies. In both the stage play and the radio, the body is in an in-between state where it is not fully there but represented. The absence of bodies already disrupts the media expectations and standards, and we have not yet considered a body of light or even the content of the play. As shown with McLuhan's theory, the slightest change may change the definition or temperature of a media format. This could also be extended by considering from which culture this is perceived, because there are also differences. Or we could even ask ourselves how many plays utilize the subversion of a format, and in which manner do they do this? I could go on for hours asking questions about Beckett's intentions. Unfortunately, I simply don't have the time. So, in conclusion, we can say that in Samuel Beckett's play, the intentional absence of physical bodies disturbs the performative theatrical media, consequently redirecting the definition of the play from sight to sound, and therefore challenging the normative standards of media. Thank you very much for listening and for your attention. These are my main sources: Beckett, Gontowski, McLuhan, Porter, and Weiss, and a short appendix concerning the images.